Out of that research project, we came up with 3 teacher types and 3 principal types. There are 3 of them. There are thinkers, there are non-thinkers, and there are meanies. Now, do you want to know what a non-thinker looks like? Look at the person sitting on your immediate left. That person is a non-thinker. That person is a reactor. That person doesn't know if it is stuffed or pumped. That person lets the world run over them. Now, do you want to know what a meanie looks like? Look at the person sitting on your immediate right. That's the person who loses their head. That's the person who gets angry. That's the person who gets uptight. That is not a Rick Schmidt. That is not a LaRue Moore. Do you want to know what the thinker looks like? The thinker looks like, well, take a look at the person on your immediate left. You got to look. Look at the person on your immediate right. You got to look. And look at yourself. What we found out is that we're all 3 in 1. We think, we don't think, and we get mean. The first item that a LaRue Moore possesses and a Rick Schmidt possesses is fairness. They are viewed by their constituents as being a fair person. If I were to ask you what fairness is, you would be able to tell me. A group of you would say, well, fairness is treating people alike. And another group would say this, fairness is treating people differently. But fairness, my friends, you see, is neither of the two. Because there's nothing more unequal than the equal treatment of unequals. Fairness in itself is a myth. Fairness does not exist. Fairness is a concept that's been conjured up by the human psyche to create Valhalla on the face of the planet. However, people like LaRue Moore and Rick Schmidt have addressed that. And so they've done 2 things. They sound fair when they work with people, and they look fair. They sound fair by giving people choices because they know how to run their buildings and they know how to run their schools. And then they look fair by making sure that things are written down so that people understand what's going on. So the first thing is fairness. The second thing is respect. And we all know what respect is because the kids all give it to us. But respect is talking to people politely, knowing their name, nodding your head, being decent, being gracious with people. And I can't tell you how many times I go into schools and I see adults talking with kids in a disrespectful manner. But here's the third area. Loyalty. It's the loyalty issue that separates a LaRue Moore from the rest of the teachers. It's loyalty that separates a Rick Schmidt from the rest of the principals. And the loyalty issue is loyalty to the kids that you are given, that you teach the kids you are given, and you teach the kids that are in your school. I learned that concept I didn't realize how emphatic it was. I learned it on the very first day that I was ever a high school principal. The very first day that I ever became a high school principal, I was at the school at 6 o'clock in the morning. I had the orange juice out. I had the donuts all ready to go. I had a staff of 23. We had been working really hard, to make sure we were going to have a good send-off that September. We had the kids all registered. It was a 9 through 12 school, about 500 kids. I'd taught in the school the year before, and the superintendent had come to me and said that our principal was going off to the University of Oregon to get his PhD, and so would I like to fill in and be the prince for a while? And I said, yeah, it sounds like a good idea to me. So that's what I did. And so that September, I rolled up to the school at 6 o'clock in the morning, had all those items, got in the school, got everything ready to go. The faculty showed up. At 8 o'clock, all the kids showed up. We had about 500, as I said. And in 23 minutes after 8 o'clock, school started at 8 o'clock, at 23 minutes after 8, I'd gone through 23 different classrooms. How's everything here? You doing okay? You got everything you need? Boy, I was doing the job of being the prince in that school. This is great. I had everything under control. At 24 minutes after 8, I walked into the office for the very first time officially as the principal of that high school. And my head secretary, Clethel, she looked down at me. She was a big woman. She was 6'8". She was a big lady. She looked down at me like she always did. She stand behind the counter. She looked out there and she said, "Mr. Simmons, how's it look out there?" And I said, "Well, Clethel, looks okay." She said, "Well, why don't you just go in your office there for the very first time officially as the prince and, you know, just sit down there behind the desk and just have a fantasy." I said, "Okay." So I walked into the office and I sat down. Now, if you've ever been in a principal's office, you all know this. There's two doors that go into a bona fide principal's office. There's the main door that goes out the office, and then there's the escape hatch. Well, I'm sitting there behind my desk, and I'm starting into this fantasy, and all of a sudden, the escape hatch door opened. The escape hatch door opened, and in walked this kid. Now, as I said, I'd taught in that school the year before, so the seniors had graduated. I didn't know who the incoming freshmen were. But this kid stepped into my office. Now, he's a brand new kid. I never saw him before. I said, "Oh, this must be a freshman." No, it couldn't have been a freshman. He had a few, hairs up here on the upper lip. He just looked a little more mature, And so I looked at the youngster and I thought to myself, "Bert, here's your first opportunity with a brand new kid who is seeking education, who is seeking a way out of this life that he presently has. He probably just rolled into town just a few minutes ago, looked over at the school and said, 'I need to be there.' So he came into our school. And I just happened to be the first person that he happened to see. So he steps into my office. I look up at him and I said, 'Yes, young man. May I help you?' And this is what he said. Steinnagel went nuts." Now, Steinnagel was a math teacher there at the high school. And I said, "What was that?" "Yeah, he went up like a Roman candle." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, I didn't do nothing." I said, "Well, I know that, but what happened?" "Well, I didn't do nothing. He just lost it." I said, "Well, what do you got in your hand there?" He says, "A referral." "A referral?" And I looked at my watch. I said, "Son, it's only 28 minutes after the first hour of the first day back, in school." "What?" "Well, I didn't do nothing." I said, "Well, all right, bring it over to me." So he had a 3-page NCR form. He walks over, he drops it on my desk, and it's all rolled up, in a ball. And so I unroll it. There's nothing here, nothing here, nothing here. Here's the referral form. Not a word on it, except over in the lower left-hand corner, where it said "Other." Steinnagel had written 3 words: "Kill this kid." So there I was. So being a good principal, I took the kid out on the front lawn and shot him. That's just the way it works. But I got to say, it did solve a lot of the discipline problems. Then I started taking one staff member out about every 6 weeks. But anyway, I want to end with a comment about the paradoxical response again. But I think it fits what we're talking about. I've lived for 20 years, or approximately 20 years, in the city of San Diego, California. And when I get ready to fly out of there, I fly out of Lindbergh Field, which is about 15 minutes from where I live. And so my wife usually takes me over to the airport, and before 911, we used to do the curb type of thing. And this happened prior to 911, where my wife let me out there on the curb, and I usually travel with 3 bags, and so I have to check one of them. And I've been doing this for quite a while, and I met a Delta a sky cap, a fellow by the name of George that I've known for a number of years, and he's been working at Lindbergh Field probably for about 30 years. Really a nice fellow. And so when I get a chance, why, I have him check my bags, and I tip TIP to ensure performance. So I get out of the car, kiss my wife goodbye, and she drives off, and I got my bags there. And there is a man that's standing right in front of me, well-dressed businessman, and he's very, very upset. He's very, very upset. And he's saying something to George like this. He says, you know, I bought this brand new set of luggage, and it cost me $800, and I took it out on one visit and one trip, and I bring it back, and I've got slashes down the side, and I've got the chain is ripped off, and I'm sick and tired of the way you guys handle these bags. And George, with his experience, looks at this guy, and this is what he's doing. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. And he's just kind of fogging this guy like you can't believe. Well, finally, this fella just stomps off into the lobby. I'm standing there. He looks up at me and goes, Mr. Simmons, hi, how you doing? He got this nice smile on his face, you know. I said, George, man, that guy was awful. I almost said something. Oh, Mr. Simmons, don't you worry about that. He says, I know how to handle a situation like that. I've dealt with a situation like that before a lot. I said, well, I noticed that you were really under control, man. I mean, have you had some training on that? Oh, no, he said, I just learned this over the years. I said, well, what'd you learn? He said, well, no big deal. I said, no, tell me, what is it? How were you able to maintain your cool when this guy was coming after you? Well, you really want to know? I said, yeah, I do. All right, I'll tell you. George looks down at his watch. Well, in 45 minutes, that fella right there is going to fly off to Detroit, Michigan. In 35 minutes, these two bags are going to Tokyo.